So I started out as a small arms repairman in the Marine Corps. We mainly had carry handles at that point in time, but we did get some of these MaTechs toward the end of my career. I got out for a while. I went back into the Army National Guard as a small arms repairman, and now I work full-time as a small arms repairman on civilian side for the Army. So I see a lot of these MaTech backup iron sights, and I see a lot of these broken. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go in order from the most common faults to the least common faults, but there's a lot. And for the cost of like $103 to $125, shouldn't be happening. Nowhere near the frequency that they are. All right, so easily the most common fault is going to be this little friction catch here that actually stops this from springing up. Just wears out and it permanently stays up. Either it stays up all the time, or you shoot and it springs up, or you load your rifle and it springs up, or you set your rifle down and it springs up. It happens a lot. And the only thing that's stopping this from springing up here is a very small tab in here, and there's a very small little notch right there. All that is when you press it in, it clicks. After enough wear of that clicking, it just doesn't grab anymore. Now, the solution, or the band-aid, I guess I should say, is that you take a punch and you can swedge this out a little bit longer and move that metal just a little bit, but again, that's a band-aid, that's not a repair. Okay, so the next common issue has to do with this shield over the elevation knob. So this shield right here is just a thin piece of metal, and if you are to smack this or hit this, this can either A, completely crack off, so when you adjust this, the spring, the detent inside of this knob right here to shoot out, or it'll be bent to the point where you can no longer adjust it. It's actually just pinned in place, or you can't walk it back to the proper setting. That's a pretty big deal, because as soon as that's gone, it just flops around and you have no tension on your elevation knob. So another fault that has to be the elevation knob is that you can hear those clicks. What eventually happens is that that will wear out. And when that wears out, these will just kind of float back and forth. You don't get that solid click anymore, and you might find yourself set to the 3, and before you know it, you're on the 4 or the 450. Not good. So one more fault that I see all the time, it's going to be this spring. You guys see that spring right there? That is what controls this peep sight actually returning to position. So it's what makes it go up, and what's actually holding that in position right there. This spring, after enough times, will actually just snap. And this will no longer go up. It just floats around like this. So you no longer have a sight picture at all. Now another big issue I have with it, not exactly a fault, but I think it's just a really bad or poor design flaw, it's just how thin the screw is here for a locking lug. So that screw is the only thing you really have that is pushed up against the Picatinny rail. Now, notice here's just the Troy. It is considerably thicker of a screw, for that just causes a lot less slop. And again, it's not exactly a fault. These do hold 0 when on the rail, but I would like to see something a little bit thicker like that. This just makes it easier, a lot less play when you're tightening it, and a lot less possible issue when you're torquing it down. So compared to a lot of other options in the market, these are priced about the same as something like the Troy or the Midwest Industries, and these are, these are considerably taller and considerably wider. I'm going to go ahead and do a close-up on that as well, just so you guys can actually see what I'm talking about. So when we look at these side by side, you'll notice that it does sit, that shield sits considerably taller than the Troy. These little wings over here are also really high. And when we look at this from a width perspective, you'll notice again that that windage knob, it sits out pretty far. Let's do an overlay here. See, the windage knob and the elevation knob stick out quite a bit in comparison to several other designs. So I decided to just put these on a piece of pick rail to actually really show you guys exactly what I'm talking about here. So check out the height on that. Height that way as well. MaTech is just a considerably larger footprint. Something else to consider is when you look at where those lugs are, you notice that this is going to be further forward. That's going to take up about another extra Picatinny slot on your rail, which means that now you can't press that optic back any further, because this is just too bulky and it's taking up even more room. See, I really like when they have short rails like this right here, you're not taking up any extra space at all. I'm making this video just so everyone is kind of aware, if they're going to buy a backup iron sight, what they're really getting. I just think that this design it's kind of fragile, it's dated, it's very large and very bulky for what there is nowadays. I would definitely recommend something like Troy, the MBUIS Pros, the Midwest, the Knights. If you can afford the Knights, they're a little bit too much. But unless you're going to do an M4 LARP rifle, I really would get something else besides this. There are better options out there, guys.